Welcome back. I'm your host, Kelle Sparta, transformational shaman, spiritual coach, spiritual business coach. I am here, not as always, with my best friend and book ethic, Katherine. Katherine has determined that she can't do the podcast anymore, so sadly, we will have to bid her adieu. But the good news is Marissa from the Holistic Entrepreneurs Group that I'm in on Facebook has agreed to come and step into the co-host position. And so I'm so excited because we have been geeking out with each other for years on this group and connecting back and forth, and we've just been connecting more often recently. And so when Katherine said I can't do this anymore, I was like, I know who I'm gonna ask. This is gonna be awesome because she said that she was told that she needed to do a podcast and didn't have the energy. And I'm like, hey, come do mine. So we're going to do this together. It'll be great fun. So welcome to the show, Marissa. I'm so excited to have you here. And I want you to tell everybody all the cool stuff that you do so that they know who you are and how to find you.
Okay. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. I have big shoes to fill. I will do my best. Um, I am the owner of Healing Point Therapeutics. I'm an acupuncturist, a hypnotherapist, and an intuitive. I've been in business for 15 years. And most recently, I have created something called Find Your Healers, which is a vetted website where people can come and find healers that are a good match for what they're looking for, while also knowing that there's a set of standards that these healers have to reach in order to be accepted to the website. So everyone wins because, I think this is what we need. And I'm sure, Kelle, you agree with me.
Yes,
You need to have
big time.
standards, and people are much less hesitant to move forward in their hiring of a healer when they know, okay, this person has been through a process to
Yeah.
be here. I'm not just finding some random on the street, I'm not just like looking around and not knowing anything about what I'm looking for. I understand what they do and how they work. So that has been my passion project over the last, it's been like 7 or 8 years. And this year I brought it into reality. So yeah.
Yes. So that's awesome. And Marissa and I've been talking, and so the beginning of this. So before we get any further in, I want to say, we're talking today about the ultimate guide to turning your customers into raving fans. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's going to lead us into next week's episode as well, which is about how to get testimonials and then what to do with them, right? So today we're going to talk about creating raving fans. And before we get into that, don't forget, like, subscribe, share, make sure that you are rating and reviewing, because all of these things are the ways that we make sure that other people get to find us too. And we love it when you guys do that. And thank you so much for all that you do and for listening, because there's no point in us doing this if you're not listening. So thank you. Okay. So turning customers into raving fans is basically about designing your customer service experience. So I'm sure you have a customer service experience that you've got in your business. You've been doing this for a while. So why don't you pick which business aspect you want to talk about? Because there's going to be different plans for different things. And why don't you tell us about yours, and then I'll tell people about mine.
Sure. So, I've been my brick and mortar business, as I said, it's been 15 years. And throughout those 15 years, I'm up to over 4,000 clients. And I am consistently amazed at how incredible my clients are. And it isn't just me. I hear this all the time because I collaborate a lot. I do a lot of networking. I share clients. I refer a lot. And people are always saying, I don't know where you find these people. They are awesome. They do what they're supposed to do. They listen to me. And I'm like, I know. And I think part of it is because the customer experience that I've kind of created for them has led them into a place of mutual respect. And when you have that, you will see that show up in all different ways in
Yeah.
your experience with the customer. And there are so many things that we do that are sort of high level as far as I feel like a lot of holistic practitioners want the toys, right? They want to put in a new sauna into their treatment room or spend all this money on these like crazy expensive gadgets because they think this is what's giving the customer an amazing experience. And that is not the truth. I mean, some of it, yes, people like toys, but I have found often that the simplest things are the things that people really remember. And so, like, for example, I know it sounds silly, but I will have bowls of chocolate, like fancy chocolate in my office. I'm an acupuncturist. I know, you know, I should be serving them nuts and raisins probably, but but these chocolates, it's not so much that they're like, oh my God, I can't get chocolate anywhere else. It just creates this extra level of, okay, I'm on my way out and now I'm enjoying this one last piece of pleasure before the session's over. And it makes
Right.
an
And
impression on people.
well, and chocolate is it creates a certain response in the brain that's unique to chocolate.
Mhm.
And so it's known as the feel good thing, right? So that's an appropriate thing to choose. And I realized that before we get any further in, we didn't define the customer service experience. So let me do that for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, which is the customer service experience is the experience that people have from the moment they first interact with your business through the time that they're engaging with services and through the follow-up afterwards. Okay, so it's the entire journey through their process. And if you've got multiple layers of work that you do with them, then it's including all of those as well, right? So then each thing has its own experience, right? So if you do a service versus a program or a course or something like that, it's all going to have a different process of how that's created. Okay, so it may be a series of emails, it may be how people interact with you, it may be the way that you engage in your services. Do you greet people with smudging or a cleaning of their hands and feet, or is there a way in which you engage in a process to create a sacred space, or what is it that people are experiencing with you? Like for my retreats, it's going to be a very different experience than for, say, an online coaching program with me, right? So because, I've got to deliver a lot more information because people are traveling internationally and all this stuff, right? So when you're doing a customer experience design, it has to account for all of the different elements of what you are delivering to that customer and whether they're going to be participating in other parts of that as well. So each offering you have will have its own design, is what I'm saying. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm going to let you go back to what you were saying now because I realized I was like, we didn't ground that. Like, I was so excited you're on the call. I'm just like, blah, blah. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, well, now everyone's up to speed. So
There
yeah,
you
I
go.
mean, every component of the customer service experience, I feel like the most important piece is it is the consistency. And that is the piece that, again, I think a lot of holistic practitioners struggle with it because it sounds really boring. And it is really boring to be like, this is really important to be consistent, to do the same thing every time. It sounds very dull. It sounds, but the worst thing that you can do, whatever you are offering, you can offer someone the world, but if you're not consistent in your offering, you have created a negative experience. Even when you think to yourself, okay, every single time you came in, I gave you a box of chocolate. Look at that. I gave you this wonderful gift. You enjoyed it. The one time you do not give that client a box of chocolate, they will leave and think, I am so disappointed. This was not a great experience for me. And I see this so often in the holistic realm where I'll go, for example, for a massage and there's candles and they're giving me cucumber water and there's all these components to it and it's fantastic. And then I go back in and now the lights are on really bright and the music isn't working and they gave me water, but there's no cucumber in it. And the massage was 5 minutes shorter, even though the last time they gave me 10 minutes over my massage time.
Right.
Now I'm looking at that as, okay, I'm still getting extra time, but I see it as a deficit.
Right.
Now judging this experience and thinking, I don't know if I want to come back. It
Right.
feels less than. And so that I think is something that we all need to really look at the consistency of what we're doing. Are we
Yes.
carry it through?
Well, and the way that you design your customer service experience also determines how much you can charge for it.
Mhm.
So if somebody walks in the door and they get the bare bones massage package with, the bright lights and the music that doesn't work and the room that's not air conditioned or heated properly, and the table, I got on a table once where I was convinced the damn thing was going to fall down underneath me, that it was going to collapse because it was, I'm a big girl, but I'm like, oh my God, I don't trust that I was tense the whole time because I thought the damn thing was going to collapse, right? If you have that experience, then you can charge a lot less for that than if you simply add the smallest of bells and whistles. You get the higher quality table. It's an extra $100. Who cares, right? And then you get, you do the cucumber water instead of the bottle of water, right? You do you come in and the lights are dimmed and the music is great and you have a little aromatherapy going, right? It costs you, $8 for a bottle of aromatherapy and $10 for a diffuser, but now you've got a whole nother layer of the experience going, right? And you do an intake form where you ask what's going on with the person instead of just saying get on the table, right? And you do an outgoing conversation where you're like, okay, how are you feeling now and where are you? And then you talk about when they should come back for their next session, right? Because they don't know. They'll just
Yeah.
book it whenever they feel like it, which could be 5 months from now. But if you look at them and say, based on how your body is taking this, I'd really like to see you in 2 weeks and let's book that. And then, we'll evaluate from there. And now you're controlling the process and they feel held in the container and in the process itself. And now they're like, oh, I need to come back okay, I'll come back in 2 weeks. You're the expert, right? And so you're literally leaving money on the table by not doing these things. And because you've done this more caring process, you could also charge more for it because people are feeling held and supported in a container of your creation. And now they know that there's a process. It's not an experience. It's not a one-off experience. It is a process, right?
Yes.
And so, were you done with your conversation? Because, okay, so I'll talk about mine then. So let's talk about the retreats, right? So the Adventures in Energetics retreat or the personal retreat, if you do either one, right? So if you're coming to a retreat with me, the very first thing you're going to get in your interaction is, you're going to get the promotion for it, right? You're going to see that. Oh my God, that was my dog. And I don't know why she just yipped, but wow. Okay.
It scared me too. I was like, what just happened?
Crap out of me. Anyway, first thing you're going to see is a promotion for it. And then you'll click through to the page and on the Adventures in Energetics retreat, you can actually click through and you can just buy the retreat, right? But on the personal retreats page, I don't do that because I want to know what the people are going to be working on. I want to know why they're coming down. I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know how many days they want to spend, right? And then I need to look at my calendar and set it up. I can't automatically set it up because I always have lunch blocked off. And so there would never be a full day available, right? And so I just need to sit down and talk to people about it and determine what's going to be the best path for them. And so that's a consultation that we have about what's going on in their lives and so on and so forth. And for somebody who's coming down for a private retreat, I may actually set them up with some content from my learning platform based on what the conversation is that we have. Because I'm like, okay, I want you to do this work before you get here. And then when you get here, we're going to do this. And then when you leave, I might give you something else. It's a curated process for each person. And so, because you're doing a curated process, because you're doing something that you may add extra bells and whistles, they may or may not need them. So some people may get them, some people may not. It just depends on what they need, right? But because you're custom designing it. So this is the other piece of the group retreat is that I custom design the retreat to the people who are attending. And so it's never the same thing twice. You could come to every single one of them and it would be different every time. And so that creates a sense of specialness for the experience as well, because it is custom designed, right? And then We have a confirmation email that has pages and pages of information about everything you need to know to book your flights, to book your travel, doing hotels in Panama City and, doing transfers and how do you get from one place to another and what are the laws around smoking and, medical marijuana and all the other stuff because you're coming to another country, right? So all the questions that somebody might have that would make them feel uncomfortable about, I don't know this. It's like, I've got a massive document for you that tells you everything you need to know, including what do you want to bring, what do you want to pack, what do you want to not pack, how do you want to do it, all of the things, right? And then we have a call a month in advance of the group call of the group event so that everybody can say, okay, these are the tours that we want to take. So I can arrange group pricing for the tours. And, I let people pick whatever they want. And then, I set up 2 tours for them. If they want to do more, they have the time to do that. But I set up 2 group tours so that everybody gets to do something together. Right. And then, we do the event and then we've got the WhatsApp group. So everybody's having conversations throughout the time. Everybody's connected into the WhatsApp group long before they ever arrive. And so if they get stuck someplace, if they have a problem, they can reach out and I'm here to answer the question and they don't feel like they're alone in their travel process. And there's always the opportunity for them to be like, yeah. And I have a fixer in Panama City if there's a problem that they need addressed and I could call her up and be like, hey, go over and they can take care of them. But there's a whole process to this, right? And what do you do in an emergency and how do you deal with that and all of this stuff. And so the more I can answer questions for people, the more I can address their concerns that they have about their experience that they're going to be engaging with, the more they feel safe to engage in it. Right. And then the more excited they can be about it.
Yeah, because that takes up
Right.
so much mental energy, like the piece of, I don't know. When you're doing something that's different, it's new and it's really freaking exciting, but at the same time, you're like, I don't know. Like, I have all this clutter in my brain over, like, what am I going to wear? How am I going to do this? What if I get sick? Like, that takes up so much space that it's hard to feel that full degree of, I can just be free to be excited. That's all I need to
Exactly.
do. So it's like you're clearing all that away for them. And
Yeah.
then they can just focus on the experience itself, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
With the last group, I actually had somebody who was stuck. She was trapped in Denver, and then there was a snowstorm blowing in, and she wasn't sure she was going to get out. And I actually did weather magic for her to get her plane off the ground. It's because she's texting me going, I'm not going to be able to get there again. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And I'm like, I got you, girlfriend. We did, I did some weather magic and I cleared it just enough to get her out of there. I tried to clear it entirely and they were not having that, but I got enough to get her off the ground. So, you text me and I got you back, right? That's the sort of experience that people want to have. I've also curated a list of restaurants so that they have a good food experience because in a retreat, if the food sucks, that's all they're going to talk about.
Oh,
Okay.
mhm.
Yes.
Oh, I know. Believe me, as a foodie, that is like the one thing that if you can't get the food right, I will never, for years on end, I could see Jesus walking by and I would remember the horrible overcooked pasta.
Exactly. And so I'm like, these are the restaurants you should go to. If you go other places, I am not responsible. Right. So, then we did other little things. So, when they got picked up at the airport and brought up here because they were coming in on the morning flight and their hotel doesn't let them check in until 3, we had everybody come to the house and Jeff made a huge brunch because the other thing we know is that when you fly out of Panama City into David, the terminal doesn't have any food in it. And you have to be there early enough that you probably aren't going to get breakfast at your hotel. And so we know they're going to arrive hungry. And so we made this massive brunch for people to arrive and just sit down and eat this beautiful homemade stuff with local fruits and, all the beauty. We have this beautiful waffle with pineapple sauce made with vanilla bean and cardamom. And it's just amazing. And so
Good.
yeah, it's so good, right? So we had this huge brunch for them, and then we had a welcoming ceremony, and we kept them busy for the whole time until they could get into their rooms. And the moment their rooms became available, we sent them to their rooms so that they could have some downtime. And this is the other thing is that you've got One of the things that I see that retreat people screw up a lot is they try to overschedule.
Mhm.
Okay. You don't want to do that. If somebody, I went to an event where I'm not going to say what the event name was, but it was definitely not. They said it was going to be an amazing thing, a retreat, amazing retreat where you were going to fill up and whatever. And the one of the other presenters at the conference, because I was a presenter, one of the other presenters at the conference changed the name of the event to Sad Conference. When we talked about it, he would say sad conference because they literally scheduled you from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night with 1 hour breaks for meals. And the places where you would have to go back to your room were far enough away that an hour was not sufficient for a meal and being able to just take a break, right? There was no downtime at all for networking or talking to people and making friends or any of that stuff. None of it. So if you're going to be designing a retreat or a conference, you want to make sure that you leave enough time because some of the things that people enjoy the most is their chance to bond and create community with the other people. In the group that went in November, they're still talking in their group right now. And it's January. They went in early November. So it's 2 months later. They're still chit-chatting back and forth in the group. Two people have gone to visit two other people from the group, and they live in different states.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
They bonded, right? But that's because there was space for them to bond, right?
Mhm.
And if you hold that space and you create that environment where they have room to go out and just be still or go hang out together and go to a bar and have a drink or, go for a walk and you just tell them, here's all the venues and here's a taxi that speaks English and I've got this person and all you got to do is like a buck a person. You could go somewhere and whatever, right? But you give people the opportunity and you give them the understanding of the environment and you're good to go, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's so important to create an experience that they can then say, oh my God, that was amazing, right? I felt held, I felt taken care of, I felt cared for, right? I felt like my experience was important to you, right? Not that you were like trying to shirk it off or whatever, right? All of
Mhm.
it. And that's true whether you're doing a retreat or doing an online course or doing an in-person service like you do. All of these things are important. And so you design the experience to support the person having an amazing experience and becoming a raving fan who will then refer business to you until the cows come home. Right.
Mhm. Yep.
And that's the thing. So, like when I moved here to Panama, we used Panama relocation tours. And this company has this, you buy their guidebook, quote unquote guidebook. It's an online, it's a private website, right? But it gave me everything I needed. Everything. And anything I couldn't find or didn't know I needed or whatever was in there or on the private Facebook group. And so if I didn't know something, I could always ask a question in the group and either somebody else who lived here already or the owner of the company would get back to me and answer my question within a few hours, sometimes within minutes, right? I felt so held and so supported and I felt like my stress levels dropped dramatically because I knew what I didn't know, right? Because in a lot of cases, you don't know what you don't know. People were like, "Well, you could go look all that stuff up yourself." I'm like, "Yeah, if I know to look for it." But if I don't know it exists, why would I know to look for it? Right? How am I supposed to know that I need to go looking for this thing? Right? So, you know, that process was invaluable. It was $600 to buy it. It was worth easily five times that amount. And we still use the private Facebook group today. And I love her and I talk about her all the time because the service was so good. And I still, 2.5 years of living here, I still feel held, right?
That's the
So,
consistency too. It's like it didn't falter once it wasn't like it started off and you felt really supported, you had what you needed, but then as time went on, it kind of trickled down to now it takes a few hours to get, now it's a few days. Like the
right.
consistency. Yeah.
Yeah. And, even now she updates the book all the time, the guidebook, quote on the website, right? She updates it all the time, sends out an email saying, "Hey, there's an update. Here's what medical insurance is about. Here's what, this is changing. This is how this immigration thing is changing. This is what you have to pay attention to, blah, 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 blah." Right? So it's consistency, right? Yeah. And, she'll take a vendor off a list if people have had bad experiences, and she'll say, "Nope, this is no longer an approved vendor." Or she'll add somebody new in if other people have said, "Hey, we've tried this person and they were good. So you always have an up-to-date process. I look at her and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I've spent 2.5 years here, and I really am not like excited about going and learning about more of the immigration process. I just want to be done. And I'm just look at her, go, wow, you've got to be really passionate about this to be constantly having all this new stuff in your repertoire and being able to update all this stuff, because it's a lot of research, and I'm just not a research person. But
It's a
that's
brilliant
why she
niche.
does it, and that's why why I do my thing, right? So it's just, and I even got to use some of the stuff I learned from her in the confirmation email that I'm using for my retreat people, right? So there's all sorts of benefits to creating a really good customer experience.
Mhm.
And when you do that, people rave about you. I mean, I've put her out on my TikTok channel, which oddly ended up being all about moving to Panama, because I started it just as we were about to do that. And so I'm a bit of an influencer on moving to Panama here, but which seems a little out of time right now. But as a result, I say a lot of stuff about her on my channel all the time. And it's just because I had such a good experience. And that's exactly what will happen if you give people a good experience, is that they will talk about you all the time.
Mhm.
And you can encourage that by offering, discounts or, whatever for every person referred and things like that. That's another way to get some more business in the door, is to build referrals that way. But we're going to talk more about that in the testimonials and what to do with them episode that we're going to do next. So is there anything you wanted to add? Because I feel like I've been like blah, 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 blah for a while.
No, I mean, I think that, this whole retreat thing, I mean, just listening to you talk about it, I think this is the perfect example of that perfectly curated experience. And like even just listening to you discuss how it works and all of that, that is the type of experience that you talk about for the rest of your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, there are certain things in business that we do where you just never forget it, and you will tell thousands of people over the course of your lifetime afterwards. And that the way that you're defining, just the way you're describing it, the way it's set up, like it just feels like that perfect container where you you have enough taken care of for you that your mind is freed. You're clear,
Yes.
but you also have that autonomy to kind of create your own experience too, and create what you want to create. And that's the sweet spot. So I guess it boils down to I have to go on a retreat with you one day. It's so
I'm here.
incredibly compelling.
But I mean, this is why Disney World is so famous, is because they have such a curated customer experience, right? They have
Mhm.
thought about everything down to the nth detail, and they have taken care of it. And so, there's so much stuff that if you do any research into Disney, you're going to find all the things that they have curated. It's terrifying. But that's why the people go back to Disney over and 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 over, because one, it's consistent, just like you were talking about, and two, it's massively curated.
Mhm.
And they know who they are, and they know the experience that they're creating for their customers. And so long as they continue to do that, they will remain in this rarefied air of amusement parks, right? They are not an amusement park, they're Disney, right? It's different.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're looking to curate in our businesses, is how do we be Disney as opposed to an amusement park, right? How do
Yes,
we
that's a great
curate
way of
the
putting it.
experience? Yeah. So I can't claim that that was mine alone. Michael Gerber likes to talk about that in his book, The E-Myth. So
Oh.
yeah. But yeah, in Disney, when they do training, you literally get a week's worth of training on what is Disney and what do we do here and who are we, before you learn how to do your job, because the culture is more important than the job. So yeah, crazy. Anyway, all right. So I think we have made our point here. So I'm going to remind you guys, like, subscribe, and share. And remember, what you focus on is what you create, what expands. What you intend is what you create. So choose wisely. We'll see you next time.